highlight. When you're finding, sometimes you have to calculate the fuel economy. Once you have that fuel economy, you can do a bunch of things with it, right? That fuel economy is what I start. If it ever asks you, hey, how far, if you were to drive this distance, how much fuel would you need? You just set up a proportion and then solve, right? But you start with a fuel economy. C asked us, hey, if you had 70 liters, how far could you drive? Again, we started with the fuel economy, right? Like the fuel economy is your starting point, and you can answer anything from there, okay? So fuel economy, quite often the question will give you that. It's like, hey, this car has a fuel economy of 8 liters per 100 kilometers. Then you know it already. Don't try to calculate it. Some students plug that into the formula. It's like, no, you already know what the fuel economy is. And so let's keep going. Example 2. An odometer shows how many kilometers the car has traveled. When Julia filled her gas tank, the odometer read 20,844.5 kilometers, and it read 21,190.3 kilometers when the gas light came on again. So basically, on a full tank, right, it drove this much. So the first question is calculate the fuel economy. So we're actually supposed to figure out the fuel economy, knowing that this car, it's a small tank, by the way, 45 liters is not much. But small cars have smaller gas tanks, right, because they need less. So this is how I'm going to do it. The fuel economy, I'm going to state the formula one more time, okay, in a short version. So it's the liters you use over the distance you drive times 100. That is the formula that I need to use. So if you're asked to solve, like, what is the fuel economy, use this formula. It's on your formula sheet. It could be on your study sheet if you wanted to. So here we go. And this is going to look a little different. It's not just plug in and go. The liters I've used, I know, is 45. But I'm making the line a little longer. You notice that because I'm going to do some extra work in the denominator. Watch this. I'm going to take the end reading of the odometer, and I'm going to subtract the beginning, the starting reading, like that. So I'm actually, this is going to end up telling me how far I drove, right? The start, take the starting away from the end reading, and we're going to multiply that by 100. So it's a little bit more work, right? But this is basically going to tell you the distance traveled. And so we continue our journey down here. So it's 45 liters over, let's figure out the bottom part there. .8, 345 kilometers, but don't miss the decimal, right? Times 100. And then now you're ready to type this in and figure out the fuel economy. So 45 divided by 345.8, right? That times 100, it's 13.01 liters per 100 kilometers. Always stated to 2 decimals, right? Liters per 100 kilometers. Just tack that on to your fuel economy. And you're done. That would answer the question there. Okay? By the way, your fuel economy is going to go up significantly if you idle your car. If you have a remote starter and you let it run for 20 minutes, it's not moving at all, but it's burning fuel. So your fuel economy, if you have that on your dashboard, the newer cars tell you, you will see that in the winter. If you do that a lot, your fuel economy is going to go up and up and up. And then in the summer, it's going to go back down because you don't do that as much, right? So it's because you're not driving a whole lot. And then here for B, calculate the cost of fuel, right? The cost of the fuel that you need if it's this much per liter. So basically, to get the cost, you just take the 45 liters and you just multiply it by the cost per liter. That's as simple as that, folks. If you know how many liters you've used, just multiply it by the price per liter, and you have to round it to 2 decimals. It's $54.41, right? I knew how many liters I've used up here, right? So we didn't need to figure out, right, how many liters we knew that already. I was told, we were told how much. So full tank, I mean, now it'd probably be more like 60 bucks, right? With the current gas prices, or maybe more. 45 times 67, never mind, there's 67. So quite a bit of money these days. So I'm going to go through these examples and then hand it over to you. I will hand out the quizzes as well. So, but as you're working, okay, you need to do a few of these before you think you got it, okay? A 2018 Toyota Tundra has a fuel economy of 12.3 liters per 100 kilometers. That is gold. If they give you a fuel economy, you need to make sure you grasp that. So now it's saying if you drove this, right, if you made a trip of 375 kilometers, calculate the total cost of fuel if fuel costs $1.209 per liter. Just think about it, okay? Let's put our thinking caps on. We need to figure out how many liters you need before you can multiply it by this thing, right? So determine, right? Calculate liters used. That's the first step on a question like this. Unless it breaks it down anyways, we need to figure out how many liters we've used. And there we go. We're gonna take what we know, this many liters per 100 kilometers. We're just basically writing our fuel economy this way as a fraction. Okay? Equals, we know the distance traveled, but we need to figure out the number of liters. Right? Liters matches liters. Kilometers matches kilometers. And then we just cross multiply and divide. We start on the right side. We need to multiply up and divide going down. It works every time. $375 times 12.3 divided by 100. So let's go ahead and do that. Don't, let me just finish this and then I'll tell you what I don't want to see here. I will use all the decimals, especially because it stops and I'm not quite done yet, right? So for this particular trip, based on your fuel economy, you would need 46 liters more or less. I would say probably 50, right? Just to be safe, but right now we're going to stick with that. So the cost is going to be 46.125 liters times the gas price, which is technically per liter. We're just going to leave it like that. So I can actually leave this on my calculator and just go times 1.209. And that is 55.77. That is the cost of fuel. This is probably a 3-mark question. I would give you 1 mark for actually taking your fuel economy and setting it up properly. 1 mark for figuring out the liters, and then 1 mark for actually figuring out the cost. Okay, so always ask yourself, do I have the number of liters? No. Let's calculate that first. And it all started, again, with my fuel economy, right? Sometimes you need to calculate it, sometimes it's given. Sorry, so let's put a number 2 here. This is like my second step, figuring out the cost. Oh, yeah.
Would it matter if I rounded the meters before I multiplied it?
To 2 decimals here?
Yeah.
1, 3?
Multiply it by the
I would say this, because this is not your final answer, I always use double the decimals that my final answer needs to be rounded to. So let's say this had like multiple decimals, like more than 3, then use up to 4, and then at the end round. Yeah, that'd be my preference, and you're not going to be penalized for rounding too soon. There's something like rounding too soon. How about this? Use 4 decimals, right? And you're like, what? It only has 3, right? Because that's all I had. If it has more, then you need use up to 4, basically. Go ahead. I think we got this, but let's do one more here. This is only asking what's the distance you've traveled. Right, that's our fuel economy. This many liters is what you have used. What distance did you travel based on that information? So 9.1 liters over 100 kilometers, and then you know that you have 32 liters. How many kilometers did you drive? That's all it's asking here. So cross multiply and divide. Please do not put another equal sign next to this whole thing. Don't do this and put the answer down. That I don't want to see that, right? So you set it up like this, and then you have a separate line underneath or beside it where you actually show me the work. You can put an equal sign next to this thing if you want. That is accurate to say, right? 32 times 100 divided by 9.1, 351.65. You're done now. This would answer the question. We round to 2 decimals. How do we know it's kilometers? Look back here. Your unknown is across kilometers on the other side. So that's how you know it's kilometers. And they ask you for the distance, right? And that's it. Yep. No, no. So that is a very good point. So let's go back. I actually wanted to do this yesterday, but never add taxes. Okay. On page 40, somewhere here, gas prices always include taxes. Okay. So you never have to, and in fact, it's never going to ask you after taxes. It's just going to be like, what's the cost? What's the cost? Yeah, it's a very good. So the gas price you see on the pump, like if you go past the pump and it's 1.499, that's taxes included, and it's actually very complicated. Like there's like taxes for the province, there's taxes for the federal, there's some like, fees for green initiatives. Like there's a lot, like the taxes breakdown it's crazy for fuel prices. We're not going to get into that, but it's a very good question. can I just, I wanted to do this on Monday, but I'm just going to quickly, on page 42, I want you at least, right? You have to have some operating costs, and I would recommend to have at least 3 operating costs in your list. And this is what I'm going to make note of. I'm not going to say fuel and insurance is usually like a given. So I might even say on a test, like other than fuel and insurance, what else would you consider operating costs? So operating costs are just things that come with owning a vehicle, right? And so here are some lists that you can, I will talk a little bit more in detail on Monday, but some of these you will recognize immediately. I wanted to show you some pictures and stuff where the things are located and what you should be doing, but I would already say have at least 3 of these operating costs on your study sheet if I ever ask you for operating costs. And there could be more. Absolutely, there are more, but these are the bare minimum. Okay, so you can put down have at least 3 on my study sheet or something like that. And so then you go to page 43 and 44 and just work on those fuel economy questions. So, some of them are very quick. So I would say try to run through them and then get to the 44. Go to the page 44 as soon as you can. That's when you have more like step-by-step scenarios, okay? But that's it for fuel economy.